I remember the exact moment I knew I was done. It was a Thursday night. Nothing dramatic, no yelling, no thrown plates, no sudden storm of rage. Just a quiet sentence, almost whispered, barely emphasized. She rolled her eyes like she was already tired of me and said, "My friends think you're just a temporary phase. And honestly, I don't blame them." Then she laughed. Laughed. Like it was nothing. Like it wasn't the kind of thing that cuts you down from the inside. Anyway, hi, I'm Theo, 29 years old. I work in marketing, brand development, mostly, and before all of this happened, I used to think I was a pretty steady guy. Practical, chill, maybe too forgiving, if I'm being honest. I wasn't someone who caused drama. I avoided it like it was a pothole in the middle of the freeway. But sometimes, no matter how carefully you drive, you hit it anyway, and it wrecks your suspension from the inside out. I grew up in a family where appearances were everything. I'm not talking about luxury cars or designer wardrobes. I mean emotional appearances. Keeping it together. Being the good kid. My dad was a military man. My mom, a teacher. Quiet, structured people who believed in swallowing your feelings and not making a scene. Handle it privately, Theo, my dad would say when things got hard. Don't embarrass yourself or us. And so I learned to swallow things. Discomfort, hurt, anger, even joy sometimes. I learned to keep my face straight when my older brother, Jordan, would mock me in front of our relatives. When he'd bring girls home and tell them, "Don't mind Theo, he still believes in love." Everyone would laugh, and I'd smile like it didn't matter. I always figured, eventually, he'd grow up. But when you start off as the golden child, you never really have to. I moved out at 22 after finishing college and managed to land a decent job right out the gate. Jordan, by comparison, burned through 3 majors, dropped out twice, then got bailed out by our parents when he opened a gym that somehow never turned a profit. They loaned him 40 grand. When I asked for a $2,000 loan to cover a security deposit on my first apartment, they told me I should learn to be more independent. I didn't push back. I just worked harder. That's when I met Rachel. She was 25, sharp as a tack, and had this magnetic sort of confidence that made you feel lucky just being near her. We met through a friend at a gallery opening. Rachel worked in events, freelancing at the time, but already making a name for herself as someone who could turn a sleepy product launch into a viral experience. She was ambitious, funny, and, at first, incredibly supportive. I told her about my job, my family, my brother, and she told me I was probably too nice for my own good. I should have paid more attention to how she said it. Not as a compliment, but as an observation. Like it was a warning. At first, everything felt like a dream. We moved in together after a year, her idea, actually. She said splitting rent would help us both, and honestly, it did. I was making enough to support myself, but not enough to feel like I could breathe. She found us a loft with brick walls and tall windows, the kind of place that made you feel like you'd finally made it. I paid my half, never missed a month. She decorated, hosted, made it look like something out of a magazine. And I was happy to let her take the lead on that. It was her world. I just wanted to build a life inside it. But somewhere in year 2, something started to shift. Subtle at first. She started spending more time on her phone when we were out together. More girls' nights. More weekends, networking. I didn't mind. She was allowed to have her space, her friends. I'm not controlling. But the way she started talking to me changed. I went from babe to can you do me a favor more often than not. She rolled her eyes more. Sighed when I didn't get her references. Laughed a little too hard when her friends teased me for working a desk job instead of being an entrepreneur. The worst part? I excused all of it. I kept telling myself she was just stressed or tired or reacting to the pressure of trying to scale her event business. She had talent, no doubt, but talent didn't guarantee success, and there were months where she barely made anything. I started covering more of the groceries, even a few of the utilities. She never asked, but she never stopped me, either. Then came the girls' trip. A weekend in Tulum. Just her and her closest 3. She packed light, wore this bright orange sundress, and kept checking her reflection in the mirror while I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to decide if now was the right time to bring up what I'd overheard the night before. Her on the phone with one of her friends, laughing. He's sweet. Yeah, but honestly, I think I'm just bored. He's like a palate cleanser. I didn't say anything then. I wanted to believe I misheard, or that she didn't mean it. But when she turned to me just before leaving, kissed me lightly on the cheek like I was a coworker or a nephew, and said, "My friends think you're just a temporary phase, and honestly, I don't blame them." Something clicked. Something cold and permanent. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. She left. I waited 15 minutes, then stood up and walked into the closet. It wasn't a dramatic decision. It wasn't even fully planned. I just moved. I opened drawers, grabbed my suitcase, and began packing like a man pulling out of a burning building. Methodically, silently. I called my buddy Aaron. He owed me a favor, and by midnight, every single thing I owned was packed and in his car. All that was left behind was a single note. Nothing fancy, just a plain white envelope, taped to the fridge. Tell them the phase ended. But here's the thing, that was just the beginning. Because as much as Rachel would become the catalyst, the real story, the one I'm going to tell you piece by piece, it wasn't about her. It was about what came next. About my family, my brother, my parents. About a long, tangled web of expectations and buried grudges, and what happens when the quiet one finally stops playing along. Because the morning after I left, I got a call. Not from Rachel, from my mom. She was crying. And that's when I realized Rachel hadn't told them anything. But someone else had. And whoever it was, they wanted to make sure the whole thing blew up. Now buckle up, because things were about to get messy. I didn't answer the call the first time. I just let it ring, standing in Aaron's cramped guest room, the note still fresh in my mind. My phone lit up with Mom, and I stared at it like it was some kind of test. The first test of the new me, the one who doesn't fold. It rang again, and again. On the fourth attempt, I picked up. "Theo." Her voice was cracking. "Theo, what did you do? Not are you okay, or where are you? Just, what did you do?" I said nothing for a second, then let out a small breath. "Hi, Mom." "She's here," she whispered, like someone might overhear her in her own home. "She's at our house, crying. Theo, she's devastated." "What happened?" I glanced at the small duffel on the floor, the one holding my work laptop and toiletries. "She told me I was a phase," I said quietly. "So I ended the phase." There was a pause, a long one. Then, as if I'd said something horrifying, she gasped. "Theo, how could you walk out like that? She said you didn't even say goodbye." I didn't know whether to laugh or let it crush me. She said I was boring, temporary. Her friends made bets on when we'd break up, Mom. What exactly was I supposed to say goodbye to? "She's young," she said, almost pleading. "People say things they don't mean. You've always been the calm one, the patient one." And there it was, that old refrain. Be the calm one. Be the one who swallows it. Be the one who fixes things after someone else wrecks them. I ended the call with some excuse about needing rest, and for once, I didn't promise to call back. Aaron's place was small, really just a one-bedroom with a glorified closet of a den, but he gave me the bed and took the couch. "Man, you look like someone unplugged your soul," he joked that night as we ate cold pizza in silence. "You sure you're okay?" I nodded, but the truth was more complicated than yes or no. I didn't feel hurt, exactly. I felt like someone had opened a box I'd been taping shut for a decade, and everything inside was heavier than I remembered. The next few days were a blur of work calls, awkward text messages from mutual friends trying to play neutral, and a few emails from Rachel I didn't open. But what I didn't expect, what hit me out of nowhere, was the voicemail from Jordan. "Hey, little bro," he said, drawing out the nickname like he always did when he was about to say something smug. "Heard the news. Gotta say, didn't think you had it in you. Walking out like that? Cold. But honestly, I respect it. Took you long enough to realize she was out of your league." I stared at the phone for a long time after that. Out of your league. Jordan had always had a way of wrapping insults in compliments. When we were kids, he'd say things like, "You're smart," in a quiet way, which sounded nice until you realized it was code for "you're not impressive enough to talk about." When I landed my first job out of college, he said, "Good for you, man. You're like a Clydesdale, reliable, if not fast." The truth was, we were oil and water from the start. He was the golden boy, athletic, loud, charismatic. The kind of guy who walked into a room and made everyone look his way, even if they regretted it later. My parents loved that about him. Teachers didn't. He got kicked out of school once for cheating on a physics final, and my mom still insists he was framed. When Rachel and I got together, I remember Jordan pulling me aside at Thanksgiving and saying, "She's a rocket, man. You're a Ford Focus. Rockets don't stay grounded." I thought he was being protective. Now I knew better. A week passed. I didn't respond to Rachel's texts. I didn't return my mom's calls. I buried myself in work, trying to keep a grip on the version of myself I was building, someone who didn't get dragged back into toxic loops. Then came the birthday dinner. It was my mom's idea. Just family, she said in the voicemail. It would mean a lot to me if you came. No pressure. Just please. I thought about skipping it. I really did. But something in her voice felt different this time. Not demanding. Not passive-aggressive. Just tired. And I figured, fine, one dinner. One polite hello. I'd bring a bottle of wine, stay an hour, and slip out before anything could get messy. I should have known better. The moment I walked into my parents' house, something felt off. My mom greeted me with a hug that lingered just a second too long. My dad gave me a silent nod, like I was a colleague he hadn't seen in years. And Jordan? He smirked from the couch, legs spread wide like he owned the place, sipping whiskey like it was a photo shoot. And then I saw her, Rachel, sitting at the dining table like nothing had happened. She stood up when she saw me, all soft eyes and trembling lip. "Theo," she said quietly. I didn't know you'd be here." I froze. Looked at my mom. "You invited her?" My mom looked like a deer caught in headlights. She reached out. She said she wanted to apologize. I thought, maybe you two could talk. I couldn't breathe. "I left," I said slowly. "I moved out. I wrote a note. This isn't miscommunication. This is over." Rachel looked down, tears welling up. "I just thought." "No," I said, sharper than I intended. "You thought I'd fold. Like always." Jordan whistled low. "Don't. That's the most spine I've seen from you since ever." "Shut up, Jordan." He blinked. Laughed. "Oh, the puppy learned how to bark." "Enough," my dad snapped, but it was half-hearted. Like he didn't really want to get involved, but felt obligated to say something. I turned to my mom. "I came here because you said it was family. This isn't family. This is a setup." "Theo, she's still family," my mom said helplessly. "You two lived together. You were practically married." "No," I said again. "We weren't." I walked out, got into my car, and just sat there, gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. The next day, I got a message from Rachel. Just one line. "You humiliated me. I hope it was worth it." And then another, half an hour later. "By the way, your brother's been calling me. A lot." I stared at the screen, not even surprised. Of course he had. Of course he saw a gap and moved in. Rachel wasn't in love with me. Maybe she never was. But she was addicted to attention. And Jordan? Jordan was a vending machine of validation, always eager to prove he could win. I didn't reply. But that night, I started thinking. About patterns. About history. About the way Jordan had always gotten away with things because I never called him out. About how my parents had let it happen. Again and again. When we were kids, Jordan once borrowed my bike and wrecked it doing tricks down at the park. I was devastated. He got grounded for one day. My parents bought him a new one, so he wouldn't feel punished for being adventurous. I never got a replacement. In high school, he crashed my car on prom night. Said it was my fault for not hiding the spare key better. I walked to class for 3 months while he charmed his way out of paying for repairs. And now? Now he was circling my ex like a hawk, waiting to pick at whatever scraps he could turn into ego fuel. It was pathetic, but it was also familiar. Too familiar. And I started to wonder, not just about him, but about all the times I let people step on me because it was easier than standing up. Because being the good kid was safer than being the one who made waves. But I wasn't that kid anymore. And the moment I realized that, something inside me clicked. Not in a rage kind of way, in a planning kind of way. Because if Jordan wanted to play games, fine. I knew exactly how to beat him at his own. But not with yelling. Not with threats. No. I was going to dismantle him the way I'd built everything else in my life. Quietly. Strategically. And with a smile on my face. Because here's the part Jordan never understood. I wasn't a phase. I was the storm coming after it. And I'd just started gathering clouds. If there's one thing I've learned about hitting rock bottom, it's that no one ever warns you about the quietness. You expect tears, shouting, a big dramatic collapse. But for me, it wasn't loud. It was waking up in Aaron's apartment on a Wednesday, staring at the ceiling with the kind of stillness that makes your thoughts echo. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just felt hollow. I'd been living out of a duffel bag for 2 weeks, rotating 3 button-downs for work and brushing my teeth next to a half-used can of Barbasol in someone else's bathroom. My toothbrush leaned against Aaron's in a red Solo cup. My socks were tucked in the bottom drawer of his dresser, next to mismatched gym shorts and concert tees. Every time I opened that drawer, it reminded me I didn't belong there. I was just borrowing space, temporarily tolerated, kind of like how I'd been treated my entire life. Rachel had stopped texting after the last message about Jordan. I hadn't responded, and I wasn't going to. I figured whatever petty alliance the two of them had formed was already fading. Neither of them had the patience or humility to keep it going once the novelty wore off. My parents, on the other hand, that was a different kind of silence. I didn't hear from them for 10 days. No calls, no texts, not even a vague, "hope you're doing okay," which, for my mom, was worse than a scolding. It was her version of an emotional timeout. She had this way of freezing people out until they came back crawling, and it worked more often than not. But I wasn't crawling anymore. Still, something about the quiet ate at me. So I drove by the old apartment one night, parked 2 blocks down, and just sat in my car for an hour, watching the light through the window flicker on and off. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe Rachel dancing with Jordan, maybe a replacement already moved in. But what I saw instead was her alone, sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone with that blank, bored expression she always wore when she was unsupervised. It didn't make me feel vindicated. It just made me feel free. I started walking more after that. Long walks around the city, no destination, just music in my ears and my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'd stop at cafes I'd never been to. I'd sit at the edge of fountains and watch tourists take photos, wondering what it must feel like to just exist without second-guessing every choice. One afternoon, I stumbled into a little bookstore tucked between a nail salon and a locksmith shop. It smelled like cedar and old paper. I hadn't read for pleasure in years, but something pulled me in. The guy behind the counter was wearing an oversized cardigan and sipping tea, and when I asked him what he recommended for someone trying to get out of his own head, he handed me a copy of The Obstacle is the Way and said, "Stoics don't flinch, man. They just keep moving." I read the whole thing in 3 nights. And then I read 5 more books. Self-discipline, boundaries, financial growth, emotional regulation, the kind of stuff I used to roll my eyes at. But now it felt like armor. That's when I started making lists. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but something about putting it all down, everything I'd neglected, everything I'd let slide, it gave me direction. I had 3 columns on my notepad. Things I let slide, things I want to build, things I will no longer tolerate. Under things I let slide, I wrote, letting Jordan mock me, taking on Rachel's bills, avoiding confrontation, saying yes when I wanted to say no, pretending to be okay when I wasn't. Under things I want to build, I wrote, my own apartment, a side business, real friendships, a healthy body, self-respect. And under things I will no longer tolerate, I didn't even need bullet points. I just wrote, being treated like a backup plan. It was the first time in years I felt like I had a grip on my own life. The next month was all about motion. I stayed late at work, volunteered for new accounts, and even pitched a campaign that landed us a small, edgy client in the tech space. My manager, Denise, pulled me aside after the meeting and said, "Where has this version of you been hiding?" "Just needed to wake up," I told her. And I meant it. With the extra hours, the bonus came quicker than expected. I put it all toward a new place, a 1-bedroom apartment near the park, smaller than the loft Rachel and I shared, but it was mine. No shared walls, no decorative pillows, no scent diffusers with fake names like Cloud Serenity. I painted one wall navy blue, got a couch I actually liked, hung up a framed print of a mountain range with the quote, "The man on top of the mountain didn't fall there." Aaron helped me move in and grinned the whole time. "You look like a man who just escaped prison," he said, handing me a beer on the first night. "Feels like it." I cut my hair shorter, cleaned up my diet, joined a gym and stuck to it, not out of revenge, but because I realized how good it felt to sweat out the anger instead of suppressing it. The trainer, a blunt guy named Max, had this habit of yelling motivational quotes mid-lift. Usually, I'd hate that. But once, during a particularly brutal set, he shouted, "Strength doesn't come from comfort," and something about it stuck. Because comfort was what had nearly ruined me. And the less I chased it, the stronger I felt. Socially, I started reconnecting with people I'd let drift. Old college friends. A few coworkers I used to keep at arm's length. I even reached out to Leah, an ex from years ago who I'd broken up with during my "I need to focus on work" phase. We met for coffee, She smiled when she saw me and said, "You look taller." I think I just stopped hunching. We talked for hours. No expectations. Just mutual curiosity. It felt easy. The kind of easy I never had with Rachel. With her, everything was a performance. A polished brand of affection that dissolved the second the cameras were off. But with Leah, I laughed without rehearsing at first. By month 3, I was thriving quietly. No Instagram posts. No grand declarations. Just slow, steady progress. But then, just as I was starting to feel truly free, Jordan reappeared. Not subtly. He called one afternoon while I was eating lunch at my desk. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. His message was short. "Yo, we need to talk. It's about Rachel. Call me." I didn't. 3 hours later, he texted, "You might want to know what she's been saying about you." Still didn't answer. That night, Aaron sent me a screenshot. Rachel had posted a cryptic Instagram story, a blurry photo of a whiskey glass, candlelight, and what looked like Jordan's hand in the corner. Caption, "Some people upgrade. Others stay stuck." I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because of how predictable it was. Rachel didn't love Jordan. She just needed someone to co-sign her version of the story. And Jordan? He'd never miss a chance to step into my shoes and pretend they fit better. But this time, I didn't care. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't text back. Instead, I walked to the gym, crushed a workout, came home, made pasta, and finished a chapter of a book on stoicism before falling asleep by 11. Growth, I realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet, consistent refusal. Refusal to go back. Refusal to explain myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. Refusal to make myself smaller just to keep the peace. And yet, something told me this wasn't over. Because people like Jordan, they can't stand it when you walk away without flinching. They need you to react, to fight, to break. And when you don't, they dig deeper, harder. And sure enough, a week later, I got an email at work. Subject line, "Just thought you should know." No sender name, no body, just an attachment. I hesitated, opened it, and what I saw made my blood go cold. It was a photo, a screenshot actually, of an invoice. An invoice billed to Theo Bennett, my full name, for an event planning consultation. The vendor? Rachel Evans Events. Date? 1 week after I moved out. Amount? $1,750. My name? My old address? My old credit card? Used without my permission. My first reaction wasn't rage. It was betrayal. Deep, tired betrayal. Because I'd seen this before. Jordan stealing my keys. Rachel maxing out my kindness. My parents turning a blind eye. And I realized, this wasn't just about an ex, or a bad breakup, or some jealousy between brothers. This was about a pattern. A long, toxic pattern that I had finally decided to break. And now they were testing me. Seeing if I'd snap. If I'd crawl back. If I'd play the role of the quiet one, the patient one, the apologizer. But they forgot one thing. That version of me. He was gone. And what came next wasn't going to be quiet. It was going to be surgical. Because I'd been the storm. But now I was the reckoning. I didn't respond to the invoice right away. Instead, I stared at it for a long time. Memorized the details. The date. The formatting. The fact that Rachel had used my name and card number without so much as a heads up. But what hit me hardest was how casual it all felt. Like she didn't think I'd notice. Or worse, like she knew I'd notice and didn't think I'd do anything about it. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about getting even. It was about getting free. Not just from her. From all of them. I didn't just want revenge anymore. I wanted a reset. A clean break. And if that meant burning some bridges, so be it. But I wasn't going to strike until I was absolutely ready. So I started documenting. Every text. Every receipt. Every shared utility bill I'd covered in our old apartment. I called the credit card company, froze the card, and ordered a full transaction history. I flagged the Rachel charge as fraudulent, and when the rep asked if I wanted to press charges, I said, not yet. Because I had something bigger in mind. I needed leverage. Proof. Not just of the charge, but of the entire pattern. So I dug through my cloud backup. I found screenshots from months ago where Rachel had asked me to just put it on your card for a few of her business expenses. All those times she forgot her wallet. Every coffee run. Every subscription service I'd been unknowingly footing the bill for. I tallied it up. $4,386.27. That's what I had unofficially contributed to her career. But money was only part of it. I needed to hit deeper. So I started gathering stories. Remember Leah? The ex I had coffee with, the one who said I looked taller? I reached out again, not to spark anything romantic, but to ask her something very specific. Do you remember that night you came to my apartment years ago? I asked. The one where Rachel was acting weird? She hesitated. You mean the night she slammed the door in my face? Yeah, I said. That one. Turns out, Rachel had told her I wasn't home, that I was emotionally unavailable and didn't want to talk to any exes. But according to Leah, I'd texted her 5 minutes earlier to say I was heating up leftovers and to just come up. Rachel intercepted her, blocked her, deleted the message thread from my phone while I was in the shower. And I believed her when she said Leah never showed up. That wasn't just manipulative. That was strategic. I started putting together a timeline of behavior, of control, of slow erasure. Friends she'd alienated. Opportunities she'd discouraged. Ways she'd kept me orbiting her priorities while mine faded quietly in the background. And then there was Jordan. I wasn't done with him either. Because for every time he mocked me, every time he rolled his eyes and said I was too sensitive, there was a deeper truth. He needed to believe I was weak. That's how he kept his power. And for the first time, I was ready to flip that dynamic on its head. I started quietly reaching out to people he'd burned. Former gym clients, old classmates, even a girl named Julia he dated for 2 months and ghosted after borrowing money from her to buy new equipment. I don't know what you're planning, Julia said. But if it involves publicly humiliating him, I'm in. I chuckled. Not publicly. Not yet. Because the real move wasn't rage. It was reputation. Jordan had built his whole identity on being the charming, confident one. The guy everyone wanted to be friends with. The gym bro with a heart of gold. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Turns out, his gym was in trouble. He'd missed rent 2 months in a row. His co-owner, some guy named Wes, was threatening to pull out if the finances didn't improve. I only knew this because Wes also happened to be an old college friend of mine. Small world. Even smaller when your lies catch up. So I scheduled a lunch with Wes. Told him I was doing some freelance branding work and wanted to pick his brain about small business growth. We met at a sushi place downtown. Jordan's not doing great, Wes said after the second beer. He's been distracted. Honestly, I think he's trying to impress some girl. I raised an eyebrow. Rachel. Wes blinked. Wait, you know her? Used to, I said, and left it at that. He leaned in. He asked if he could use part of the operating budget to rent a villa in the Hamptons. For networking. I nearly choked on my miso. Wes continued. I told him no. Flat out. Then he went quiet for a week. I filed that away, along with the fact that their lease was up in 3 months. And if Wes bailed, Jordan would be stuck holding the bag. The pieces were lining up. Back at work, I asked Denise, my manager, if I could take a few days off the following month. I told her I was working on something personal. She nodded. You've earned it. I smiled. It's going to be productive. Trust me. What I didn't tell her was that I was laying the groundwork for something more than a vacation. I was planning liberation. So I got to work. Step 1 was clearing every lingering connection I still had with Rachel. Bank accounts. Shared logins. Social ties. I pulled my name off the old utility bills, changed my email passwords, and even deactivated the Spotify account she still used. Petty? Maybe. But necessary. Step 2 was leveraging what I'd learned about the invoice. I called Rachel. First time we'd spoken in months. She sounded surprised. Theo. Just a quick call, I said. Wanted to let you know I saw the charge. She hesitated. What charge? For your event planning consultation. The one billed under my name. I owe that. Her tone shifted instantly. It was just a mistake. I must have used the wrong card by accident. You used a card that had been removed from your Apple Pay 6 weeks prior, I said flatly. Silence. I'm not pressing charges, I continued. Not yet. Theo, come on. But I do need you to pay me back. The full $1,750. By the end of the week. I don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Sell one of your designer bags, I said, my voice calm. Or call Jordan. I'm sure he'd love to invest in your future. You're being cold. I'm being clear. That weekend, she sent me a partial payment, $500 via Venmo, with the note. Happy now? I didn't reply, because I wasn't done yet. Step 3 was quiet reputation management. I started working with a friend of Aaron's who specialized in personal branding. We built a sleek 1-page site for me, highlighting my work, my consulting projects, and a few side initiatives I'd started. I launched a newsletter, started putting myself out there, slowly, quietly, but with purpose. Within 2 weeks, I'd landed 2 freelance gigs on the side. Not much, but enough to start building momentum. Step 4. Gathering allies. I reached back out to Leah, to Julia, to Wes, and a few others who had crossed paths with Rachel or Jordan and walked away burned. We started compiling receipts, literal and emotional. Texts, DMs, emails, proof of manipulation, gaslighting, financial irresponsibility. Not to go public. Not yet, but to be ready. Because I wasn't planning some petty drama drop. I was planning a reckoning so calculated they wouldn't even know it was me until the last domino fell. I'd seen the way Rachel built her world, polished, curated, fake. I'd seen the way Jordan carried himself, loud, reckless, insecure. Both of them were living on credit. Emotional, social, and financial. And I was done being their safety net. So when the final piece clicked into place, when Wes called me on a Thursday night and said, "Jordan's planning to throw a launch party for a service we haven't even built yet, and he's fronting it with Rachel's company," I just smiled. Because now I had everything I needed. The venue, the budget, the timeline, the receipts, and 2 people so desperate to prove they were better off without me. They were about to invite the entire city to watch them implode. They didn't know I was coming. They didn't even know what I had planned. But I'd be there, smiling, watching, waiting for the moment everything they built on borrowed ego finally collapsed. It all came together on a warm Saturday night in early September. The launch party was held in a rooftop venue in Midtown, an overly ambitious choice for a fitness brand that hadn't turned a profit in months. White string lights hung overhead. An open bar glowed beneath a branded banner that read Pulse, reimagining the fitness space. Jordan's voice echoed off the glass walls as he welcomed guests, mic in hand, wearing a blazer 2 sizes too small, like he thought squeezing himself into it would somehow elevate his status. Rachel stood beside him in a satin dress that shimmered under the lights, fake smile locked in place. She was holding a champagne flute, eyes scanning the room, but she wasn't sipping, probably saving it for Instagram later, an empty glass for appearances. And me? I stood near the bar, tucked into a corner with a clear view of the stage, drink in hand, confidence in full swing. Nobody noticed me at first, which is exactly what I wanted. A month earlier, I'd gotten the invite through a mutual friend who thought I might want to squash the beef and support the brand. The irony nearly choked me, but I said yes. I said it politely. I even thanked him, because I wasn't just going to attend. I was going to close the show. Let me rewind. Wes, Jordan's co-owner, was on his last nerve by this point. He'd seen the plans for the party and immediately called me. He's using Pulse money to pay Rachel for event coordination. I told him no, and he said it was already locked in. I don't know what to do. Let me help, I said. So we came up with a plan. First, we let Rachel work. We let her plan the event, book the caterers, the DJ, the signage. She spent weeks posting about it on her socials, hyping up her involvement with one of the fastest-growing fitness brands in the city. She dropped hints about a possible influencer partnership, even teased a brand ambassador role. Then, 1 week before the event, Wes filed a quiet motion with his lawyer to freeze all spending from Pulse's joint account, pending a formal audit. He cited mismanagement and breach of contract. The funds used to pay Rachel's invoice, flagged and blocked. She didn't find out until the day before the event. And Jordan? He was blindsided. He tried to cover it out of pocket, but he didn't have the liquidity. He maxed out 2 credit cards and begged one of his college buddies to front the rest. That buddy, Tommy, was one of the guys Jordan had bullied in high school and kept around for ego boosts. But Tommy wasn't stupid. He demanded a promissory note. In writing, Jordan signed it. Desperation makes people reckless. But the real twist? I had already secured the venue's original invoice through a favor from someone who worked their events team. And guess whose name Rachel had fraudulently used to sign off on the initial booking? Mine. Again, it wasn't even clever. She'd reused an old email address I'd forgotten to deactivate. It gave me all the proof I needed. So I timed it perfectly. 30 minutes into the party, while Jordan was mid-speech and Rachel was flashing smiles at local influencers posing in front of the Pulse backdrop, I stepped forward. Wes was with me. So was Julia. And Leah, standing quietly near the exit, phone ready in hand. I walked up to the venue manager and calmly handed him a folder. Inside, printed documentation of the fraudulent booking, credit card misuse, and a letter from my attorney notifying them that their contract had been executed under false pretenses and that payment had been obstructed by a known identity theft complaint. Is this a legal matter? The manager asked, suddenly stiff. Not yet, I said, but it can be, unless you shut it down now. The music stopped. The lights came on. Confused murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. Rachel rushed toward the bar, heels clacking like gunshots. Theo? What is going on? You'll find out, I said evenly. But not here. Jordan appeared behind her, face red. You think this is funny? I smiled. I think it's overdue. The manager announced that the event was being shut down due to a contractual issue. People started grabbing coats, downing last-minute drinks, taking awkward selfies as if to prove they'd been there. Rachel looked like she'd been slapped. Jordan looked like he wanted to swing. But he didn't, because Wes stepped forward and dropped the bomb. I'm dissolving the partnership, he said, loud enough for several guests to hear. You violated every agreement we had. I'm cutting ties. No, you're not, Jordan hissed. I already did, Wes said. Papers were signed this morning. Rachel turned to him. Wait, you said. I said nothing, Wes replied. You were never a client. You were a liability. Jordan's voice cracked. You can't do this in front of everyone. I wanted to do it in front of everyone, Wes said. You built your reputation on ego. Let's see how it survives reality. It was a bloodless execution, a slow unraveling of their carefully woven image. Rachel tried to salvage it. She posted a story later that night claiming the event ended early due to unforeseen noise ordinances. But too many people had seen the truth, and it only got worse from there. The promissory note Jordan gave Tommy? It was real. Tommy hired a collection agency after Jordan missed the first payment. His credit took a nosedive. The gym lease never renewed. Pulse officially closed 2 months later. Jordan tried to spin it as a rebrand, but the truth leaked out like oil from a cracked engine. And Rachel? Well, she made one last desperate play. She emailed me. A long message. Rambling. Defensive. And finally, begging. I was lost, she wrote. I didn't know how to separate work from life. I made mistakes, but you blindsided me. You embarrassed me. I thought you were better than that. I didn't reply, but I did forward the email to her newest client, who dropped her within a day. You see, when someone builds their life on illusion, the moment reality touches it, even slightly, it all comes crashing down. And all I had to do was show up with the truth. No shouting, no threats, just facts. And now I live in peace. I've moved to a new apartment across the city. Quiet neighborhood. Real friends. Wes and I still grab drinks sometimes. Leah and I stayed close. Closer than expected, honestly. And we've been talking about starting something together. A creative agency, maybe. Nothing big. Just something real. And my parents? We've had a few difficult conversations. They didn't understand at first. My mom thought I was being cruel. My dad called it dramatic. But I told them one thing that made it stick. You taught me not to make a scene. But maybe the problem wasn't the noise. It was the silence. I'm not the same man I was. And thank God for that. Because sometimes you have to be dismantled to realize you were never built right in the first place. So if you're waiting for the final line, the one that wraps it all up, here it is. Tell them the phase ended. And this time, it didn't come back.
That she said it that way.
Did she think that was a good thing?
Yeah, she enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Allegedly. I didn't speak to her directly.
Right.
But I think that's what she was saying.
Right.
Like, whoa.
Right.
Just whoa.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the thing that came out of your the episode that we did that shocked me the most is how little this is discussed in the mainstream. And I had not known until you brought it up, until you became a guest on the show, until I started researching it. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that this was something that was so common. And so one of the things that comes up all the time is infertility with couples that are trying and they're using IVF, and it's more common now than ever before. And there's been a lot of things that a lot of factors that people have attributed to that reason. A lot of them being older people that are, they put their careers aside in their 30s. They decided now it's time to have kids. They're worried that it's too late. But listening to you talk about it, it seems like that's only one part of the issue and not the big part. The big part seems to be that we're being poisoned, and we're doing it by virtue of our modern world that we live in, where so much of your life relies on plastic. And it's very difficult for people that are so set in their ways, they have routines, they don't really understand, like, what can I do to eliminate this stuff from my life? Just having the conversation and understanding that these things are having an impact is great, but the steps that people need to take in order to eliminate these things from their life, I think that's what's really important to get out there now.
Thank you. You said it really well. Let me just give people a place to go. You go to unplasticyourlife.com, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's action, and then you can go to the various places in your home that you can...
It's just Unplastic Your Life, one word. Unplasticyourlife.com.
Yeah. Let me see if I got that. Yeah, so unplasticyourlife.com, go to Action Hub, and then to Protect Yourself. And that'll give you lots of things to do to lower these exposures.
It's almost time for spring break, so maybe you're headed to the beach, or maybe you're taking the kids on a road trip, or maybe you're just taking some extra time for yourself. No matter what, you deserve a break and a reset, and AG1 can help. AG1 is your daily health drink. Just one scoop combines your multivitamin, pre- and probiotics, superfoods, and antioxidants to help support a healthy immune system and digestion. Plus, it travels really well, so you can start working it into your routine even when you don't have a routine. Just slip a few travel packs into your luggage and have a nice flight. I've talked about AG1 for a long time, and it's not just me. I know a lot of people enjoy it. It's very easy, it's very convenient, and you deserve to take care of your health. Visit drinkag1.com/Joe Rogan, and for a limited time, get a bottle of omega-3 vitamin D3K2 and an AG1 flavor sampler for free in your welcome kit with your first subscription. That's an $111 value at drinkag1.com/Joe Rogan. Nonstick cookware, that stuff
different.
Is that different?
Yeah.
It was when you have nonstick cookware. Does that have any endocrine disrupting chemicals as well?
But different ones.
Different ones. Which ones are those?
So those are what's called the PFAS chemicals, and it's in actually not just cookware. It's anything that puts a barrier between two medium, if you will, like a rain jacket will put a barrier between the rain and your skin.
Right.
And also stain resistant, barrier with the stain. And it's very, very prevalent. I mean, it's all, it's in clothing, it's in...
I've heard it's